Hello and welcome to another episode of Breaking Mayberry, the podcast that's better than you and you know it. I'm one of your hosts, I'm Marty Schneider, and I got a little sneer on that one.
It's just tacky. But please, go ahead.
The other host, Dan Ludwig.
And with us today in the studio, I'm very excited, someone we've been trying to have on for a while now. Indie wrestler, host of Hey EW on YouTube, backstage interviewer at All Elite Wrestling, from Toronto, Canada. Standing 6'2" and weighing in at 209 pounds, the Seinfeld savant, the Golden Girls guru, the perfect stranger, RJ City. Thank you, and I'm sorry.
You won me back with the perfect stranger.
I thought you would like that one.
Yeah, I apologize now. I'm now interested. Where did you get my height and weight from?
That is from professionalwrestling.fandom.com.
Okay, because depending on where you search, I could be 5'10", I could be 6'4". It really varies because wrestling databases are very reputable.
Did he get the right one, or are you trying to cultivate an air of mystery?
Don't tell us.
Yeah, you want to be unknown.
No, I'm happy. I am 6'2". I think I'm a little heavier now than what was listed.
Yeah, this picture is you a little younger. You kind of look like Antonio Banderas in this picture.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Now?
RJ, thank you so much for coming on the show. There is a big, strange overlap between our fans and wrestling fans, especially AEW. But one of the reasons we wanted to have you on here is because you're a TV guy. You are an entertainment showbiz guy. In fact, for a while I didn't know that you were a wrestler. I knew you as that guy in his underwear that talks about Golden Girls.
That's how I prefer it, quite frankly. I want to congratulate you on your perseverance. How long? When was the first time we tweeted?
2021.
And look at us now, and here we are. So hats off to you. And yeah, you say that, this is this cross thing here. I don't think the worlds are that different.
Well, more on that. How so? Because I was going to ask.
Well, isn't AEW in a sense its own Mayberry?
I don't know, RJ, is it?
Same setting, right? Most of the time. You know where the entrance is.
That's true.
You know where the ring is. Same commentary. Like, there's a comfort. The comfort of Mayberry is that you know everybody, right?
Okay.
You have these consistent parameters, and the chaos happens within that, but kind of on the outer level what you are getting.
Characters do kind of come in and out, but there's always a strong base.
Yes. But even on Wednesdays you'll hear Taz and Excalibur, on Saturdays you'll hear Nigel. There is a comfort to that. And also, when people show up, like Adam Copeland, it is like when a new person comes to Mayberry and everyone's like, oh my God.
I mean, I see why you are such a Golden Girls guy, because I think the comparison is way stronger on Golden Girls. It has that sense of familiarity, but Blanche DuVall basically has intro music, they verbally will throw elbows and shit. There's a much more of a sense of violence to that show.
Right.
Those women are trying to hurt each other, but at the end of the day, it's going to be okay.
Yes. Even if we take the violence out of it. Because my one complaint about Mayberry is that it's not violent enough.
Damn right.
They do exist by their own simple rules that are not of modern society. And that also feels like wrestling to me.
I think it's also probably the nostalgia factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty important. What role does nostalgia play in what you do in wrestling? I went to an AEW taping the other day after not following wrestling for a good 2 decades, and I still saw the names Rob Van Dam and Hardy Boys and guys that were so. Where does nostalgia come in?
Well, even beyond that, inherently in wrestling, I feel like there's a nostalgia to just being able to say that guy's good and that guy's bad. I think there is a simplicity in the storytelling, and sometimes that's a knock, but I'm not saying that right now. Sometimes things are so complicated, and, on Real Housewives, everyone is an asshole. And I think it's easier. It's nice to go to wrestling where you just go cheer this guy and boo this guy. That's all you have to do, really.
And they make it real simple for you.
Yeah.
They make it really easy for the crowd. Like, that's one thing I'm impressed is the crowd work. Literally, all you got to do is come out and cheer for or trash local sports team.
Right.
And you can have the crowd against us. Last week, it was right after the Phillies had been eliminated from the playoffs and were not going to the World Series. So that made it real easy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there were some good bits around
But there's that thing where, obviously the hardcore fans who watch every week enjoy it deeply every week. But you can go after having not watched regularly for a while, or somebody who can never. I feel like if you go to a wrestling show, after 2 matches, you got it. Even if you've never seen wrestling before, you know what to do.
And even the sort of morality play of it, which is they talk about in the episode we're going to talk about, it's something that we kind of try to imprint upon other sports. Everybody in football is always looking for who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. Is Aaron Rodgers our heel? Can we hate him? Can we turn these people into that narrative?
Right. And every time, I don't know, I'm thinking of Johnny Damon and the Yankees hating him, which was from, 20 years ago. You could just feel the media going, great, we got somebody.
I was growing up in Massachusetts when all that shit went down, so that was I went into school and people tore up pictures of him when he went to the Yankees and shit like that.
Yes.
There was a white hot rage that as a child I did not totally understand.
And there's legitimate heel face and face heel turns in sports, in media.
Sure.
Dan just mentioned Aaron Rodgers. That's a big one. Yeah. Right? That's a guy who definitely went face to heel.
Yeah.
Tom Brady's another one. NBA has a guy named Dylan Brooks who is leaning into his Dylan the villain persona.
Mm-hmm. It's nice to just have an environment to cater to those innate urges deep within inside us to say, that guy's a piece of shit.
So RJ, why then did you build your love of sitcoms and your love of, let's say, classic television and kind of your whole Johnny Carson stand-up thing? How did you build that?
That's a vague way of putting it. And this stand-up thing he does.
You come from a stand-up and kind of a background.
Yeah.
So how did you incorporate that, and when did you start incorporating that into the wrestling persona?
When you start wrestling and you're new, you do things that you're told. Mm-hmm. People who've been doing it longer are more successful, say do this. And I was originally in a tag team that was kind of, I guess, a parody of the Rockers, listening to metal and, these guys Poison. And fine, for what it was on the surface on those shows, great, cute. It wasn't necessarily me,
Right.
I come from let's watch some Laurel and Hardy. That Jerry Lewis movie was fantastic. Have you seen the latest episode of The Rifleman? So, when you get comfortable enough with wrestling in general, then you go, okay, I'm going to take a chance and do something stupid. And the first thing was sort of singing, sort of like a lounge singer kind of thing. And it seemed to work and also be different on the show. Not a lot of people were singing like your Mario Lanzas. So then you just go deeper and deeper down that hole of becoming more of yourself. And it's a weird, and you guys have heard it, talking about that stuff, mentioning Lawrence Welk is like a dog whistle, but not to racism.
You draw in your people, right?
Yes.
You mentioned the Rifleman. You don't know how hard it is to get people to talk about Rifleman. I'm 35 years old, and I have strong opinions on the Rifleman.
Yes, right? But and then it's one of those things where it's I'm taking a risk going, I'm going to talk about Lawrence Welk. I don't really give a fuck who wants to, I'm going to talk about it. And then you have people coming up to you. Like I had a guy at the merch table years ago. Can you sign this Lawrence Welk record? What? What? My grandmother used to watch it. We watched it all the time. Can you sign this? So then you find all these people, and then you cultivate, and people go, oh my God, it's stuff that they remember but don't talk about.
I get pictures when people find like Jim Neighbors records in their grandpa's attics or whatever.
If you, he is like one of the top 3 thrift store album guys.
Yes, every
Neighbors,
shop has
Lawrence Welk, like Johnny Mathis. My theory is if you take a Lawrence Welk album out of a thrift store and buy it, if you go back in the store, if you turn around and go back in, there will be another Lawrence Welk album there. At no time is there not.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. They have
walk
to.
out and there's like a little popping noise and it just like spawns into reality.
Yes. And Jim Neighbors would just record any song imaginable.
Anything.
Yeah, he was certainly not burdened by taste.
That certainly explains the role of Gomer.
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. And then to just see this little window of a singing career and go, I'm going to take a run at this.
I mean, that was kind of a theme on there. Was he was kind of like, I'm a classically trained singer, and you've got me playing this hillbilly hayseed, and I'm never gonna ever not be this hillbilly hayseed. That was his wrestling persona. He was caught in the Gomer Pyle persona, and he could never escape it. And I kind of always felt like he was sitting there, I went to Juilliard! Like,
and lest we forget, if you've ever been to a Cracker Barrel, Andy Griffith has a few albums under his belt, too.
He does.
Dude.
He does.
Have you ever seen A Face in the Crowd?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Have you heard, so the song he did for it? It's like, you can only find it on YouTube. I don't even know if it's like actually in the album. I think it like plays during the credits. But he has a track that is fucking haunting. Like I've shown it to like music teachers and they've been like, where did you get this? Like,
yeah,
the range that he displays on it is just incredible.
Yeah, that's one of those things where you're like, oh, you know, this guy wasn't always like a Southern half shitty kind of actor guy.
Yeah.
when we talked about A Face in the Crowd, I said that like if things had broken a little differently, he could have easily been like a Rat Packer.
Yeah,
like, he could have hung out with Sammy and Frank, and he'd been like the Southern one.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a movie where you go, once you see it, you go, I have to let more people know about this.
Yeah,
because it also feels oddly modern.
Yes,
in a way, in its tragedy, and also in its shots of forehead sweat.
so sweaty. Look,
untapped potential in that forehead sweat.
As you know fully well, in the first episode of Cheers, there's a large discussion about what is the sweatiest movie ever made.
Mm-hmm.
And they come up with the answer of Cool Hand Luke. Rocky 3 is also in there.
Yeah.
I'm going to say A Face in the Crowd is in the running.
Oh, right? Yeah.
That's a sweaty movie. Aliens, I think, would be my vote.
I don't think that counts as sweat. I think that's mucus discharge.
Yeah. And it's also, it was so humid in that spaceship.
Yeah.
That I find it sort of forced.
They have an unfair advantage.
Right.
Fine.
It's like doing a movie in a sauna.
Fine. Predator. Is Predator better?
Okay.
Predator is also a very sweaty movie.
Yeah, I think it's also oily.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. They like had to lotion up in between every single take. Not the actors, the characters. They were like, all right, we gotta grease up, boys.
Yes.
Yeah.
What a dick measuring contest that entire movie is.
The lard budget on that movie must have just been outrageous. That line item must have been so deep. RJ, you said before we started recording, you said that there was one Andy Griffith episode that you wanted to talk about.
Yes.
We're not by the way, listeners, we're not actually doing Andy Griffith. Well, we're doing an Andy Griffith show. We're not doing the Andy Griffith show.
We're going to do a little bit of everything, I think. I think we already have.
But you said that you wanted. There's one episode of the Andy Griffith Show you did want to talk about.
Yes, and now there's two. Now that I think of it, but so I'm sorry. Barney's Physical.
Yeah, okay, that's the one where Barney has to gain weight.
Yes, and he's
not
only too light, but he's too short.
Yes. Yes.
I think the term is like barely alive, basically. I think like
Right.
the doctor's verdict was like, how are you standing up? Like, were you born or just kind of assembled like a homunculus?
Yes.
And they hang him up by his neck in the closet to try to expand his height.
Right. They have
Yes.
this stretching contraption that just pulls on his skull, which, may I say, I've done before. People, that's a real thing. You can put people in traction, not to stretch them, but to put, space between their discs.
Okay. Sorry, I thought it was for the purpose of you being stretched.
No.
And I got so pumped for 5 seconds.
Is that why no website has your height correct?
Yes.
Is that why it's different? Are you just hanging out, stretching your neck in closets?
Yes,
in between sets?
I have pre-stretch and post-stretched heights. No, it's a thing where it puts you in traction and it feels nice. I also think, and correct me if I'm wrong, so he's stretching, and then Opie and the kids come by, and they think he's hanging himself?
Yes.
Yes.
Like, what?
Yes.
I remember watching that and just being floored to not only have, hey, wouldn't it be funny if people think he's hanging himself, but also to have watching him and not really be bothered by it.
Selling tickets, as a
Yeah.
matter of fact.
Opie basically goes, hey, do you want to see my secondary father figure committing suicide poorly?
Yeah.
Just feeling, it's the sociopathic nature of, like, young boys, where it's
Right.
like, yeah.
And then to not go, gee, it's taking quite a while for him to die.
Yeah.
Imagine Lean on Me, but like the dead body in the woods also helped raise you.
Yeah. Yes, it's so dark.
If nobody had yelled at them, they would have been throwing rocks at what they thought was a dead body within like 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then Aunt B, and I remember this because it's very odd, and I looked it up. Aunt B hands him a milkshake to fatten him up. First of all, it's hilarious that he has to get taller and fatter.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, he has to do both.
The milkshake, there was a fuck up in production. The Baskin Robbins logo is on it.
Yes, you can clearly see a 31. I mentioned apparently there is a Baskin Robbins in Mayberry.
Right, that doesn't have any brands other than Baskin Robbins. And I do think...
And Ford.
Sure, of course. They don't make cars, they make Fords.
This is true.
I can't remember if it's right before or right after Floyd has a stroke. I think
that is post Floyd stroke.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
A little before, because Floyd's stroke episode was back when they get abducted by a group of escaped women convicts. So I think this was maybe like a half a season after.
I'm gonna double check.
Please look this up. I don't want to get this wrong. I don't want to be sued by his estate.
Oh, the McNear estate is very litigious. We've gotten like 8 cease and desists from them. Only them, weirdly. Like, the Griffith estate could give a shit. McNear is on us.
I think I can verify this is post stroke. Also, that's in the same season we're doing right now. That's season 5, episode 2. Because these seasons never end for us.
Right. Oh my god. So
They're so long.
There's another shot. There is a shot of Floyd walking, which is quite remarkable given the circumstances. And he's walking in the wrong direction. He says, I'm going back to the barbershop. I think they're at the courthouse. And whatever the layout is, he walks the wrong way.
Goes in the other way.
Which is probably a good indication that he should stop walking.
They couldn't get a second take of that. They couldn't say, Howard, do that again, and he would be like, no.
Yeah.
Physically, no.
Yes.
Just collapse like a cartoon skeleton immediately after that take. Just into a pile.
The other episode, and I cannot remember the name of it, there is a child riding his bike on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And he's been warned repeatedly. And he basically tells Andy to go fuck off. He certainly tells Barney to fuck off. And then Andy sees him do it again. and straight up takes the kid's bike.
That's
then
the
dad
one
tries to fight him, right?
Yes.
Like, I think the dad is
that's
like...
the selfish kid, right?
Yes.
Selfish kid or
And like the third act is the dad confronting Andy and Andy explaining it, and then the dad basically going, "You're right, my kid is a dick." It's like, sorry. And I think it's that like you can keep the bike or something ridiculous.
That is Opie and the spoiled kid.
Yes.
And that episode does end with the dad going, "Hey man, you got a woodshed around here? You got a place I can go beat my kid?"
Yeah.
You're right. I can't believe I haven't been beating my kid this whole time.
Yeah.
He goes from 0 to 60 on the aggressiveness of his parenting style, where he's like, he goes from complete negligence to just like, all right, you made some good points. I'm going to start hitting the kid.
And there is this thing about Andy that I love, where he reminds me of Batman in the sense that he has the most exhausting sense of justice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're hitting on something. Keep going,
right?
Keep
like,
saying these
you
words.
Can't pick an easier way. You're so wrapped up in your morals that you have to make it hard, not only on yourself. You know, at both during Batman movies and the Andy Griffith show, do I yell, "Would you just shoot somebody?" Please.
You also have to remember that in Andy Griffith logic, the worst thing you can ever do, like worse than any crime, is hurt somebody's feelings a little bit, right? And he makes things so much worse on himself. That one episode that you mentioned, the spoiled kid, there's also, and this is one thing we talk about on the show, a pretty insidious, super shitty message there, where Andy essentially tells his son, "Hey kid, never ever negotiate. Fuck you for negotiating," right? Because Opie learned from the spoiled kid that the spoiled kid's allowance is different, and that he doesn't have to do as many chores. Opie comes in and says, "Hey, you gave me the same allowance last week when I did my normal chores as you did this week when I did extra chores and cleaned out the garage and did a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm doing extra work for more pay." And then Andy's response is, "Hey, where's that woodshed?" Basically, like, there is a deep kind of like, "Hey, if you try to negotiate ever, you're just like this spoiled kid on the bike who was just riding on the sidewalk, man." Like,
there was a lot. It was very like suppress the middle class messaging there.
Oh man, this show hates homeless people too. Like,
oh yes,
straight up hates homeless people.
Yes, and
RJ, do you want another job? Do you want to be on the show?
I was just gonna bring up one of my favorite. I don't know if he's homeless, but he's certainly crazy. The wonderful Howard Morris.
Yes.
Yes.
We have very conflicted feelings on Ernest T. Bass.
Yes.
Well,
because he's basically playing someone with special needs.
I mean, he is a goblin, man. We referred to him as like the sexual assault goblin.
Yeah.
Like, yes. I mean, yes, he is illiterate.
Yeah.
He functions at like a 6-year-old's level, but also he really loves to kidnap women and like with sexual menace. So we have very, very weird feelings about that guy.
Yeah, the thing is, he's also the best character and the worst simultaneously because he delivers such a like desperately required chaos element, but also
he's the Joker. If Andy is Batman, he is the Joker. There's no way to stop him. He is a force of chaos. You just have to outlast him.
Yes.
But, the thing we compare him to is like, what if the Joker just usually beat Batman's ass? Like, what if the Joker won like 80% of the time, and Batman won, if at most, moral victories over the Joker?
You know, Howard Morris also played Jerry Lewis's father in The Nutty Professor. And he's on your show of shows with Sid Caesar. He's got a very nice body of work. Another episode that you've just unlocked in my brain is when a group of hillbillies sort of kidnap Aunt B.
Yes! Oh, jeez, dude. Yes, that is the, what are their names, Marty?
The Darlings. The Darlings, played by real-life bluegrass band The Dillards.
Yes.
Yeah. and they kidnap Aunt B because their patriarch, Mr. Darling, whose name escapes me right now, is in love with her and and wants to woo her, and they kidnap her, and then Andy goes up to rescue her, but he just rescues her by taking her outside and then saying, "Hey, let's go back in and do a bit. Let's go do a bit with your kidnappers."
Yeah, let's get one over. This will teach them. And that's the other. You're like, oh my god, no. There's another one. I'm so sorry to do this to everybody.
No, go for it, man.
There's another one with the classical modern American sense of gypsies come to town.
Oh, I don't think we've gotten that one yet.
I think that's a color Is that a color episode?
No,
I don't think we've gotten there yet.
No. Let me see if I can look it up now.
That might be like just over the horizon for us. We've gotten the old timey tonic salesman, like the.
We got the old timey tonic salesman, and we did get a fortune teller like deck of cards episode.
It is a color episode. You're correct.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh, looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. There is also one of my favorite. You know, when you a show like this, when they jump the shark, you somehow love it even more. But
I think that's going to happen for us. I think we're going to wind up actually loving the color episodes, the ones that the Andy Griffith fans do not like.
Well, wait till you get to the reunion movie. I think it's the first one, which
also directed by Bob Sweeney.
Oh, great!
Yeah,
because the first 12 minutes is just Andy saying hello to people. It's
kind of nice.
It's kind of nice, but it's also like, God, it's just literally them saying, "Look, we got everyone."
Well, I'm assuming that for the time period, that was like the effect of seeing Avengers Endgame in theaters, where like a character would show up and people like, "Oh!" and you'd need to have like the applause.
It's Floyd. Floyd!
Oh my God! He said the thing.
God, that's Goober's music. Goober's coming.
It's a constant stream of, "Gee, Andy, it's good to see you again." And it's like, oh my God, we get it.
Okay, right, I gotta get your opinion on this. Gomer Pyle UMSC. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because we did an episode on the backdoor pilot for it, and felt really weird about the guy that's like a mental handicap allegory going to Vietnam.
Yeah, it's horrible on its own. I don't think it's any different than the shows of the time. You know, when you put it next to Hogan's Heroes, suddenly it's not that bad of a show.
And that's kind of why we hone in on Andy Griffith specifically, is because like Andy Griffith fans go to the mat for Andy Griffith as like a textbook for life, right? Nobody's writing the gospel according to Gilligan, right? Nobody is, so it's a show that I don't necessarily know that the show takes itself seriously. No, the show takes itself seriously.
I think it does.
Some moral episodes where Andy's looking at the camera and saying, "This is the lesson you should learn today." And as opposed to other 60s sitcoms that are just, we're having fun, we're doing something silly, we're gonna do a bit. Like, that's why I can't get as mad at those as I do like Andy Griffith.
It's one of those things where it's like, and we're all of the similar age, where it's like the shows like Chris Elliott's Get a Life is only impactful if you know something like Mayberry. Like, it's only anarchy against something neat and orderly like Mayberry.
Or Joe Pera. Joe Pera kind of plays with that, because he presents Upper Michigan as a Mayberry-like world, but with revolving characters that are, everything's just slightly off. Well, I find it way more wholesome and pure than what Andy Griffith is.
I mean, like without like having really like dug into the concept of Mayberry, it kind of like enriches like even like something like David Lynch or like Stephen King, where it's sort of like, really, it helps you kind of understand like the fury against small town America, because you now have like full frame of reference for like what this actually represented to people.
Right.
Or early Tim Burton and the suburbs, right?
Yeah.
Early Tim Burton is
Yeah.
about how much he hates the suburbs. That kind of
Yeah.
stems from this.
There really is a direct line between like something like Twin Peaks
Yeah.
and Mayberry. And how many
Twin Peaks especially.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it is a good Mayberry did lay that groundwork where, if you did something like you don't realize there are clear rules in this universe. You know?
Yeah, and I think because TV was so early and there weren't rules about like what a TV show could be. There weren't like, 3-act structure, A and B plots. I mean, those existed in plays, but we hadn't done them in TV so far.
Mm-hmm.
And so the example I always give to people is, listeners have heard this before, episode 1 of the Andy Griffith Show. The plot is, Opie's a little sad because Aunt B comes to town and she doesn't know how to catch frogs or play baseball. That's the plot of episode 1. Episode 2 of the Andy Griffith Show is, there is an escaped convict!
Mm-hmm.
He is on the loose, he has a gun, and only Sheriff Taylor has the small town know-how to bring him down.
Yeah.
Just the wild tonal whiplash, because TV didn't really have rules at that point. We didn't know like what the standards of like what is a TV episode.
Yeah.
Which has led to Dan and I screaming numerous times, this isn't television. Nothing is happening.
Right.
This is 12 minutes of saying hello.
Yes. I also want to mention a wonderful, and maybe you guys should do this when you're finally done the series, there's a fantastic parody of the Andy Griffith Show on SCTV. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have not.
It is a double
our Canadian
parody.
listeners are very excited.
Yes. It is a double parody of the Merv Griffin Show. And Rick Moranis plays Merv Griffin playing Andy Griffith. And
this is extremely high concept.
I cannot believe you haven't heard of this. It is going to blow your mind.
You had me at Moranis to the degree that I barely listened to anything you said after Moranis.
It is just an unbelievable double parody of, like, the ultimate killing two birds with one stone. He's crossed over the Merv Griffin Show and the Andy Griffith Show and almost all of the characters. And Joe Flaherty plays Don Knotts.
I was going to say, Moranis would be who I would cast in the Don Knotts role, but that's funny.
Moranis is playing Merv Griffin. Playing Andy Griffith. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot going on there. Okay. All right, RJ. You've sold us on this.
Yes.
Also, yeah, you've also volunteered yourself to come back for the Return to Mayberry movie.
Yes. Just for the
sorry,
opening. I just want to talk about the opening.
We got you on a 10-minute clock and then you're out.
Yes.
It would actually be extremely funny if that was like the last episode of the podcast, we just had all of our favorite guests show on for 10 minutes at a time and just brought them in one after another. It'd be hard to arrange that. Okay, I need you to watch this TV movie from 1989, but you only need to watch from minute 28 to minute 38 and then come and talk about that.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about some Matlock?
Let's talk about some Matlock.
Let's talk about some Matlock. And RJ, I'm glad that you brought Matlock to us today because I had never seen Matlock before.
Wow.
We've been procrastinating on Matlock, kind of saving it in case it was our plan B.
Yeah.
We've been sitting on it. We've been sitting there like, this is an Andy Griffith Show podcast. We're going to need to do Matlock eventually, but we just kind of kept putting it off. I don't think that Matlock, I'm glad we're doing it under these circumstances. I don't think Matlock works for what we do because it's a pretty standard like procedural.
Yeah.
You know, it's silly, but it's funny, but it's fairly serious. I don't think there's a lot for us to do week after week, so I'm glad we're doing it under these circumstances. We are talking about I blanked on my.
I know the title of the episode.
No, we're talking about season 2, episode 7, The Annihilator.
Yes. Which is already a great. So my other niche passion is wrestling episodes of non-wrestling shows.
Mm-hmm.
And
you have a whole YouTube channel about this.
Yeah, a little series called the Hollywood Squared Circle.
So good.
So
I watched some of these. I specifically did not watch the Annihilator one though.
All Matlock episodes, very hard to find. I believe I had to like really pay to watch this.
This one is on Amazon Prime. It's one of a handful in this season that are on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
They're very assorted.
Starring as a wrestler, Dick Butkus, who just passed away.
Famed Chicago Bears linebacker Dick Butkus.
Yes, who you can also see as the coach in Hang Time. We all remember and nobody remembers Hang Time?
I don't remember Hang Time.
I've never heard of Hang Time.
Oh, it was a show. It was a 90s sitcom about a high school basketball team. And unfortunately, that's it. That's really
I'm imagining Dick Butkus as a high school basketball coach, and I'm into it.
Also, the ring announcer in this episode is actual LA Lakers commentator, announcer Chick Hearn.
Yes.
They brought in an actual broadcaster for that.
Yes.
To play that role.
A little light on the actual wrestlers, which, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And the referee is Count Billy Varga, who is not only I wouldn't say he's famous now, but he was famous back then. But he also appears in probably 70% of every wrestling episode of non-wrestling shows. Just because, like, him and there's guys like Jimmy Lennon, who they're in LA, they did one of these once, and then every time that casting director needs a wrestling person, they go to this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it just becomes the guy. Like, sometimes you have a guy that's just like the bank robber, or like, you know.
Yes.
So
yeah, your go-to.
Right.
That's interesting. And like, sort of a thing that literally only RJ City is equipped to notice. Like,
yes.
Congratulations, man. This is a bit of information for you and only you.
Yes. Also, as the judge, Robert Downey Sr.
That was our Robert Downey Sr.? Are you shitting me?
Yeah. Robert Downey Sr. right there. Holy shit.
Oh my god, I'm so mad at myself for not clocking that. That's cool as shit.
People don't realize. They just think he was a junior for commercial purposes. And it's like, no. There was a father who...
There was a man. There was
resented him.
There.
Yeah.
Who made some kick-ass movies.
Yes.
Not to be confused with Robert Downey Jr.'s The Judge. A movie in which Robert Downey Jr. spends half the time wondering if he made out with his own daughter.
Yes. Let me tell you how little people have talked about this episode. If you Google Matlock the Annihilator, I'm like the second thing that comes up.
All right, buddy. Well, prepare to be the third as well, because it's going to be this episode. We're
making a real contribution here. It's I think, a nice episode.
Let's do for our listeners. Let's recap the plot basically.
Okay.
Of this episode. In this episode, Ben Matlock, who is a high-paid defense attorney, and I say high-paid because literally every synopsis that I read of Matlock emphasizes how much this dude costs.
Yeah.
They make a big deal out of it. So Andy Griffith plays Ben Matlock, a Atlanta lawyer, defense attorney, and in this episode, he is convinced by his secretary, his typist, who is a big wrestling fan, to represent Vic the Annihilator Garrett, played by Dick Butkus,
right,
who is accused of, in real life, killing his wrestling rival, Sailor Jack. Yeah. So
all my familiarity with Matlock up until this point came from Grandpa Simpson yelling it. And so I did like my cursory Wikipedia scan, and the summary of Matlock was he's expensive, he's very frugal, and he eats a lot of hot dogs. And I'm kind of like, that's your third thing about him? Like, I think it's expensive, he's a widower, guy loves hot dogs. And I was kind of like, this character is like beloved, right? There must be more to him than that, but he is kind of describe him as very passive. He's kind of just, I think sort of the soothing thing about him is that he's just kind of there. He's not particularly like emotionally invested in anything. He's just kind of like a very, I can see why Grandpa Simpson loved him, because he's sort of a soothing presence by like how placid he is.
Yeah. There's a lot of DNA between Ben Matlock and Andy Taylor. Especially these seasons of Andy Taylor, where like basically his job is to just go, yeah, and then explain something to you nice and slow. In fact, so much of the character is so similar that I was actually annoyed. I'm like, I feel like I got to take back every nice thing I've ever said about Andy Griffith, the actor, because he's just doing the same shit in a different, like, setting. You could have literally just made Ben Matlock Andy Taylor, and it would have been exactly the same. He plays exactly the same role. He's just an older version of Andy Taylor.
I would even say he's somehow as passive as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I would describe Matlock as a show for people who think Columbo is too fast paced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this did not need an hour or whatever it is. Oh my god.
No, it was kind of like it felt like the most like I watch a lot of like 70s and 60s crime shows, and it felt like of all of them this was the most just pitched straight down the middle, over the plate, not trying to be the most clever like murder plot in the world. Not trying to be, like, the most brilliant detective. It was just kind of like, a guy got murdered, the killer had confused people with a neat little trick, Matlock figures it out, boom, we're out by 40 minutes.
Right.
I mean, it's same creator as Perry Mason, and a lot of similarities between this show and Perry Mason.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say, Dan, you said 60s and 70s. I give the air date. This originally aired November 10th, 1987, written by Ann Collins, story by Rift Fournier, directed by Christopher Hibbler. I don't know any of those names, but I always just give the credit where it's due.
So we're deep into the rock and wrestling boom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense why they would be like, let's do this. The wrestler who died, Sailor, is played by Jack Wildman Armstrong, who is a very not famous wrestler. He's less of a wild man and more of just a real sleazy looking guy.
Yeah.
In like the best wrestling way. Why he's named Sailor in this? Not really sure.
How would you say, you mentioned that there's not a lot of wrestlers filling out the cast of this.
Right.
How would you say that they're doing at acting it? Like, do you feel like they're getting a pretty good piece of it, or?
Let's talk about that first scene, especially. You get like 4 minutes of, right at the beginning, you get a 4-minute match, essentially. How's the wrestling looking in that?
So those are wrestlers. I immediately have a problem with the ring.
Okay.
The ropes are too big and loose and weird, and it just, I know that that's not, you know what I mean?
Right.
And even if it is a ring, it's just a really shitty one. More often than not, sometimes they'll just get a boxing ring or try to, whatever. That bothers me. I will say, for the wrestling is very good for what this is. In terms of like, oh, okay, that's inoffensive. And I would also say, if you have to get a guy to play a wrestler, Dick Butkus, pretty good. Yeah. In terms of like being grizzled and being, you know what I mean? And not making fun of the wrestlers.
But Butkus isn't an amazing actor, but he does pretty well in this role.
As far as football players go, he's fucking Brando.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Just by being competent.
Yeah. By having his brain, competent enough to say lines up, and he does pretty good jobs. I believe his emotions. I believe his emotions when he says things like, "Hey, man, I didn't do it."
Yes.
He just seems like mildly pissed off throughout the entire thing, which it's hard to tell if that's like what they asked for of the character or if that's just what he could do. Whereas he's like, I'm pleading for my life. I don't want to go to jail. Kind of annoyed about it, not particularly mad, but this is some bullshit. And it's like, I don't know if that was what was in the script, but he's playing the shit out of it.
Yeah.
And to be fair, he does disappear for like the entire middle chunk of the episode.
Sure. Right? He's not exactly carrying this thing.
Yeah.
He is there. So there is a wrestling match between Vic, the Annihilator, and Sailor Jack, during which Sailor Jack pulls a move wrong and the Annihilator actually gets hurt, actually hurts his shoulder or something, which I thought was going to come into play later. Like, he couldn't have hit him with this bottle because his rotator cuff was torn or something. Never comes into play. So they had an action and they actually get angry. with him and threatens him on screen, like on the air, and then threatens him again backstage and says, I'm going to go over there and fix you, and threatens him in front of our list of suspects, basically. His manager, another wrestler named Gentleman George, the wrestling promoter Tommy O'Keefe, who is essentially, I don't know if Vince McMahon was Vince McMahon at this point, but he's our Vince McMahon stand-in. You know, he's our promoter.
Yes,
and
I think this is really the beginning of, like, Vince is on commentary at this point. You know, he's appearing weekly, and if you don't understand that he's the owner of the company, you certainly know he's involved. You know,
yeah, it makes it really clear. And he's also there is Connie Hammond, who is Sailor Jack's manager. So there's our list of suspects, basically.
Yeah.
So I do want to do a quick aside. Sailor Jack, good fucking premise for a wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
Liked it. And the place where it kind of comes apart is when he is walking out of the ring and he is getting in a confrontation with the Annihilator, and he has a little sailor's hat on, which I thought was a really interesting choice, because not even like a cool like ship captain hat, just like a little sailor man, like he's on Tugboat Willie,
which predates one of my favorite wrestlers, Tugboat, by at least 3 or 4 years. So really a really progressive episode of Matlock as far as wrestling is concerned. But yeah, I mean, he's really sailor in outfit only. He does not act like one, you know. If anything, he's a guy who looks like he's at the tail end of his naval career.
He doesn't have a nautical themed finishing move.
Right.
We also remember G.I. Joe was also a popular cartoon around this time, and they had a character named Shipwreck who was wearing basically the same outfit, right?
Right.
Shipwreck also was their Navy guy. So he's kind of doing that, but he's not. I mean, I don't know if I want him to do like a Popeye voice or an R or something. I mean, what's he going to do?
Yeah,
I guess really the one line. You know, once the champ, always the champ.
The thing that really bothers me is, so towards the end, there's a big kind of chase scene through the empty arena.
Yeah.
Which I love, because they use the full actual arena. I don't know if it was the LA Forum or, you know, whatever it was. Clearly they went to a wrestling show and used that space. But when the actual wrestling happens, and when there's crowd shots, it's clearly not there.
Interesting. It's clearly like a sound stage. It's like the CBS sound stage a lot.
Yes. Okay. That ring I hate because it has small turnbuckles. It has these giant, weird, loose ropes. It drives me nuts. It's too big. It makes no sense.
And the ropes wouldn't be that big a deal, except they use the ropes for a bit at the very end of the episode.
Yeah.
Right? Annihilator gets wrapped up in the ropes and kind of strangled and choked in them.
Yes.
So they call attention to it.
And they did do the smart thing of having the Annihilator wear a mask.
Yeah.
Which means Dick Butkus doesn't actually have to wrestle.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm going to be... I feel like a child a little bit because I really thought it was Dick Butkus wrestling there.
Which is great. But I will also
the
say...
magic of television.
Yeah.
If it is, then amazing. And probably what they did do is have him do as much of it as possible. And then the things like, the episode ends on a sunset flip, which I do not see Dick Butkus doing a flip.
Oh, absolutely. His shins would explode if he tried that at this point in his career.
So I think all that was edited, I think, really well. You know?
Yeah.
And it's really, for, what is it, 1987? Wrestling, I would say it's up to speed with what's going on in the ring in 1987.
It's on par. The Matlock audience is not getting upset. The the giant overlap between Matlock fans and 80s wrestling fans.
Yes.
They're that little Venn diagram is not being upset at this point, except they're all mad about the ring, obviously.
Yes.
So Butkus, the Annihilator, decides that he wants to go and hash things out with Sailor Jack. And this is not just an kayfabe. This is not just an in-character dispute. They actually were friends, and then they had a falling out.
Right.
And it's never discussed what it was, and it doesn't matter.
Well, they do say, like, basically Sailor Jack injured him really severely to the point where he had to switch to being a heel. He couldn't be a hero anymore.
Right.
So kind of ruined his career and basically did it almost again, like almost ended his career tonight.
Yeah.
Which I think justifiably pops off about.
Sure.
He's not even, everybody is like, he threatened to kill him and he was basically like, I'm going to get even with you, implied in the ring. Like, he's not like, I'm gonna come to your house and murder you with a wine bottle. He's like,
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a common thing. You're talking trash. At that AEW screen taping I went to the other day, I watched a man tell another guy that he's got 2 bullets for you, like, to go in your head. Like,
Sure.
This is threats. RJ, I want to ask a question about, like, behind-the-scenes wrestling things.
Yes.
Do you guys, just like you practice moves,
Mm-hmm.
do you guys also have to, like, have almost like a psychological discussion of just like, hey, man, I'm doing this in character? It's kind of understood, but also I'm sure, like, there are people that genuinely don't like each other, just like you don't like all of your coworkers. I believe that Andre the Giant genuinely didn't like Hulk Hogan because Hulk Hogan's an asshole.
Sure.
So where do when you're in character for so long, where does those lines blur, and what do you have to do to sort of keep professional, I guess?
I mean, I think it's up to the. I deal with that when I do AEW. Not that it's not that I deal with it, but it's a consideration where it's like. Mm-hmm. I'm, doing jokes for 10 minutes. I don't want to really insult somebody. Just like anyone, they're like, I would assume people are touchy about certain things at certain times. But I think, by and large, people understand what's an act or what's not. Or even there's people like Eddie Kingston, who are just like the rawest performer in the world. And is clearly, I don't want to say not performing, but it's pretty obvious that it's the real him out there. And having said that, he's kind of like an anything goes guy. There's an understanding that if the light's on and if it gets a reaction, then great. And that's also the thing of doing comedy, where it's like, well, how honest do you want to be, and where are we crossing the line? And the answer is we don't know until we know, and if it works, then it works. So it's cool. I would say it's different for people. Some people are playing characters. Some people are themselves. Jeff Jarrett is Jeff Jarrett. His family's been in this business for like 50 years. That's real, Is
there like a thing of like, you're getting into like the trash talk portion of it. Is there like a thing that happens where it's like, oh shit, no, a line got crossed? Not like intentionally.
A safe word?
But like, yeah, is there like a thing of like, oh shit, we actually like kind of hit a nerve here? Like, well, I didn't know I had this line, but it turns out I do.
There's a certain thing where you go, gee, you don't want to make your opponent look like a complete piece of shit. Then you're just wrestling a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Okay. That's just like if Batman didn't care about the Joker that much. And it's just like, this guy's just a fucking loser. Then you really wouldn't care about the Joker, But I think it's different for all people in all situations, and there's no blanket rule for that. Mm-hmm. Obviously you don't want to say, oh, this guy's broken or old or he's a bad wrestler, but then sometimes you do want to say that if it gets a good reaction and it makes sense and it goes somewhere. So yeah, I guess you really don't know until you do it, but. I hope, you don't know if it works until it works. Mm. But I think people try to be considerate as possible within the realm of. But, if I want to insult somebody, I would insult them. I don't. if it hits a nerve with you, I think that was not necessarily the goal, but you want the fans to see that,
Right. Sort of like the rawness of it a little bit.
Right. Which is fun. So I used to team with David Arquette.
Right. I watched David Arquette. Cool. I watched You Cannot Kill David Arquette the other day.
Yes.
Which I'd like to tell our listeners, that's not true. You shouldn't kill David Arquette. He seems like a really nice guy, but he is human.
I'll put it this way: a lot of people have tried. And we used to team together, and I never wanted to team with him, and I didn't like him, and that was the story of the tag team. And every time we got in the ring, I would get on the mic and apologize to the audience, and I would get very close to him and say, from the bottom of my heart, you are the most talentless human being I've ever met in my life. And I would say that every single match. We had, I don't know, 20, 30 tag team matches, and he said, and he understood the parameters and what and why and the role I was playing. He said every time I told him that, it hurt. It stung. And he would say it after, like in the ring before he'd go, I felt it. I still feel it.
And you guys are friends. You guys are bros in real life.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, that's my job. Not that I think he's a talented human being. I wouldn't go that far. But, that's was my job there.
That took me a second.
But also, as much as and he's a guy who has his heart on his sleeve, and that always, no matter what. And I'm sure he acts like that too in his different roles, and that's how he does his stuff. But, if it hurts and it stings, then you go, okay, good. Hopefully it affects the audience, which is really the goal.
Now you got me thinking about it and relating it. Like, Dan and I on this mic we razz each other. We're meaner to each other on this mic than we are hanging out in real life.
Yeah.
Because there's an audience, because this is, even though we're being us, this is the role we play. And this is just what you're talking, just maximized to the extreme, made bigger and more, which is what wrestling is. It's everything made bigger. So that makes sense to me. That said, I would imagine that if somebody winds up dead, you probably don't want recording of me under any circumstances saying that I wanted to kill that guy an hour before.
Yes, that was a stand-up bit of mine where it's like, why would you say that on the mic, on camera? You're the first person they're going to look for.
If fucking Stone Cold Steve Austin goes missing, are they going to have to interview everybody else who called him?
Well, if you're going by motive, Yeah. It is funny. I also did an episode of a Canadian show called Murdoch Mysteries, and it's a mystery detective show set in the early 1900s. And they did a wrestling episode with essentially the same premise.
Okay.
Of
it's a good
guy
premise.
dying.
It's a solid
It
premise.
is. Yeah, and it's a guy dies in the ring, and well, there's a bunch of suspects in wrestling, And also, wrestlers seem crazy enough to do it, too.
I would play that point and click game. That sounds like a real fun. Go around, like, investigate the turnbuckle and click on that. Some sort of stock dialogue. I don't think we need to look at the turnbuckle right now.
On Murdoch Mysteries, were you a regular, or were you just doing the?
I was just doing that. I was the sailor of the episode.
Unloading box. You were the murder victim. I wasn't sure if you were like the guy doing the equivalent of unloading boxes, like on an episode of Law and Order.
No, so I wrestled the handsome. I can't remember his name, but he was handsome something, and he dropped dead after the match.
Oh, so you were the suspect?
Yes.
Interesting. Did you do it?
No, you want me to ruin the whole episode? No,
okay,
they came. It's okay. They came to me and I said, "No, this is fake. What is wrong with you people?"
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to answer really honestly.
Okay.
Do you think you played that part better than Bupkis? Do you think, like, one-on-one, do you think you hit it better?
No. No.
Okay.
I Dick Bupkis all the way. Yeah, I used it's the early 1900s and it's Canada, but it's been settled by British people, so you have to use a really weird accent. Like a non-accent, but you have to have good English. It was not my strong suit, let me put it that way.
We're asking the hard-hitting questions and getting honest answers here on Breaking Mayberry. All right, so Vic goes to Sailor's apartment. He puts on a suit, which I find adorable.
Yeah.
He gets a little rough with the security guard who doesn't want to let him in, but he's going to go, and I believe he genuinely wants to, like, talk it out with Sailor and become friends again. He goes up there, and he finds Sailor dead on the floor. Place has been trashed, and looks like he was killed with a wine bottle.
Great sleazy LA apartment.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
yuppie, this apartment.
Yeah.
Beautifully yuppie. Cassie Phillips, who is Ben Matlock's secretary, typist, she is a wrestling fan. She and Matlock's partner Michelle were at the show that night, and Cassie convinces Matlock to take the job. This is where we see that little bit of Andy Griffith, of Andy Taylor inside of this, because he's not interested at all. He's fixing a chair the entire time.
Yes.
And
Yes, he is. Which I will also say, it's a useful storytelling device with wrestling episodes to have somebody like Matlock, who's not really a fan and doesn't really like it. Because there are plenty of people who don't like wrestling or just don't get it.
Yeah.
You know?
So he becomes the audience surrogate.
Right.
Yeah, he calls it vaudeville. He calls them a bunch of gorillas that escaped from a hormone farm.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a pretty good line.
Which is something I will steal at some point.
Did notice this, and maybe this is, I don't know if this is a comment on Andy as an actor or a comment on how they wrote Cassie's dialogue, but I realized halfway through my second watch, I was like, you could take this scene word for word and just replace Cassie with Ronnie Howard. And this could be a scene between Opie and Andy Taylor easily. Pa, you know how sometimes you take a case because someone asked you to? Sometimes you take a case because they pay you? Well, what if somebody asked you to take a case? What's this all about, Opie? It's the same fucking dialogue. You could...
Yeah.
And I think that says more about how they wrote this grown woman than anything that Andy's doing. But it's real and similar.
Right. I think it's also a good lesson in how to get 40 minutes out of a 10-minute premise.
Hey, main character, do you know your whole deal? Like the core premise of the show? Like the thing that achieves forward momentum and gets us to where we need to be? Okay, cool. Glad we've summarized that.
I don't want to go all the way through this, but you get the idea here. So Vic is accused. He's the most obvious suspect in Sailor's murder, especially because the police walked in and found him leaning over the dead body. Mm-hmm. So it seems pretty cut and dry. Ben goes to the district attorney named Julie Marsh, who is horny for him, right? Like, pretty clearly horny for...
But, like, I would say, if anything, like, respectfully horny. Like, a very cordial horny.
Mm-hmm. They're definitely flirting a little bit. She's like, I don't want to keep my favorite defense attorney waiting, you know? And later on, she's with them at the wrestling match. Like, afterwards, they're kind of on a little date.
Yeah.
But she reveals that there is a supposed eyewitness to this, somebody who saw the murder. That is a crazed fan who was camping out on the roof of the building across the street from Sailor's house, spying on him. That's fun.
Yeah, the prosecution's star witness, this clearly unstable teenager who regularly stalks a wrestler from the nearby rooftop.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm not super familiar. Is that like a common occupational hazard in the world of wrestling? Like, do you guys regularly get roof teens?
It's so funny. I walked... Where were we? We were in Louisville last week. Or this week. And I had to walk down the street to go to the hotel or whatever. And someone yelled my name in the dark. And I went, I'm going to get mugged. But of course, why would a mugger know my name and then yell it?
Yeah, I want to know why you went straight to mugging and not murder. It feels more like a murderer might know me. A mugger isn't gonna say, "Hey, man, you're that guy from AEW. Give me your money." Like,
my idea of mugging is so old. Like I expect him to say, "Stick him up."
Yeah. A guy in a ski mask.
Yeah. I'm gonna if I ever get mugged, I'm gonna just have I'm gonna be like, well, this is how it happens? Really? This has changed so much.
TV lied to me.
I have successfully escaped 4 muggings just on the virtue of in the moment not understanding what's going on. Like, somebody has been like, give me your wallet. And I've been like, why would I do that? You're being really mean to me.
Yeah.
I'm not,
and they just give up.
They're just like, oh my god, I fucking can't with this guy.
I will say,
Dan Ludwig is too stupid to mug.
Yes.
I want that clear. On the record, you are too stupid to steal from.
There are some totally out of line fans. There always has been, but obviously online now where everyone knows where you are and all that, whatever. This is very plausible. I don't know what the fuck you would watch Sailor do in his apartment.
See, back in the day, when you wanted to have a parasocial relationship with a wrestler, you had to work for it. You had to find a rooftop.
God. Absolutely.
You had to stake him out like an assassin. You had to put in the time and physical commitment.
Yeah.
Now you get on Twitter. You look up somebody's on Google Maps.
Yes.
The craft is gone from it.
Yeah. You don't respect them anymore.
There's another scene I want to talk about here. RJ mentioned it a second ago. Ben sends his private investigator, Tyler Hudson, played by Keen Holiday, which is a name I love. He goes and investigates the arena, and he's spying on Tommy O'Connell, who I mentioned earlier is our wrestling promoter. One of the plot points here is that Sailor Jack was rumored to be switching from that promotion to a different promotion.
Right.
Going to be moving to a different company, leaving his team here. So that makes Tommy a suspect. We do the chase scene. Some wrestlers chase the investigator through the arena, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And then Tommy gets this monologue, which for me is easily the best part of the episode. Like, he looks like he's about to break into song. And the music plays this behind it. There's like a march, like a John Philip Sousa march playing as he begins to talk about wrestling is a play between good and evil, and this guy was good. He was in fact America, and the punchline is it would take me at least a couple of years to replace him. It's a good punchline. It's a good scene. I want to call this guy out particularly. I didn't recognize him from anything else he'd been in. He seemed like he was a character actor. He sounds like if I was to make a Saturday morning cartoon version of True Romance, this is the guy I would get to play the Christian Slater part, to do the voice of Christian Slater in a cartoon.
There's what I like about this speech is that there's a healthy dose of racism here.
Oh.
Of that American.
Of
the American is good, and and I mean that in a way where they're aware of it in wrestling at that time.
He does say that he kills the terrorists.
Right.
That's one of the things that he does, right? 1987, right? So you got Iron Sheik is wrestling at this point.
Oh my God. Iron Sheik, Mr. Fuji, anyone not from, and even people from New York are like almost always bad guys. Like, that's how middle America wrestling is.
Is it a Jewish thing?
I think sometimes it's also maybe a homosexual thing.
Oh, okay.
Or an elitist. Like, I just think of Adrian Adonis was a real like New York character who then turned and very flamboyant. But it's listen, Hillbilly Jim. You got to be Hillbilly Jim.
Yeah.
And also every ethnicity at that time, early 80s, mid 80s, for every group of immigrants, you had your hero. The Polish guys had Ivan Putski. The Italian guys had Bruno Sammartino. The hero was always the immigrant willing to assimilate.
Oh, shit.
You know what I mean?
I mean, there is the Sailor Jack has the blonde hair, blue eyed quality. Definitely
right. He's a Navy man. He's an armed forces man.
Sure. Yeah.
On that note, I think we got to talk about Jimmy Ito and his brother.
Right.
This episode does feature
a behind the scenes question again, RJ.
Yes.
Is how often do Yakuza dressed like the Blues Brothers factor into the world of wrestling?
Yeah.
Is that common? Is that like
to explain? Let me explain what Dan just asked. Two other suspects in this caper are the Ito brothers, who are in fact just completely silent Japanese mobsters who just dress like the Blues Brothers, never have a line, and just kind of hang out and break a table in one scene. They are ridiculous. They look like discount James Bond henchmen.
Yeah.
RJ, how often do you deal with this?
And their true motivations are entirely unknown.
It feels like it was monetary, right? They were being paid. They were being paid by O'Connell. They were being paid by Jimmy O'Connell to threaten Sailor into not switching. And I have a more serious question about that, but I want you to answer Dan's question first.
It's really funny in AEW. We have AEW works with a lot of different companies. They work with a lot of companies in Mexico. They work with New Japan in Japan, obviously. So sometimes when we do pay-per-views like Forbidden Door, there will be people from the New Japan office and to accompany the wrestlers, and they are the nicest, sweetest, best people, and everyone is so happy to see them that they're doing this and whatever. So this is just so backwards and so insane. And also, both these men must be sweating their balls off. Talk about sweaty episodes.
There is. Should also mention that whenever the Itos come onto frame, they keep the same music, but it suddenly becomes stereotypically Asian.
Yeah, a gong is heard more than once.
Yes. There is this wonderful thing when you watch this episode where you go, are we commenting on racism or are we just being racist? Like, I can't, because they understand it with Sailor being American and that's why he's a hero and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, so you're aware of this. And then you're using two suited Japanese men.
Everything is kind of thrown out of whack by the suited Japanese men because
their presence is so weird.
It's so out of left field. It kind of, it feels like a thing from a different episode. It feels like they wanted to just do we want to do an episode about Japanese guys doing karate in suits. Can we just throw that in here?
Yeah. And again, an excellent lesson on how to make a 40-minute episode.
and these guys really are only in 2 scenes. And I think one of those scenes is just a picture of them.
Yeah.
But they make an impact on there.
By the way, a lot of photography in this episode too.
There's a lot of analysis of photographs. Yeah. A lot of analysis of photographs.
But at a certain point,
by paparazzi.
Yeah, you go. This is in the middle. You almost forget it's a wrestling episode.
Yes,
because there's so much done with the photography and the apartment building and these dresses and this whole fucking thing.
After they take Dick Butkus back to the scene of the crime, which I'm pretty sure is not a thing you're allowed to do, but it makes for good television, so we'll allow it. That happened in the first 15 minutes. He basically disappears. With the exception of what's in there, not Gorgeous George, but Gentleman Jack.
Yes.
There's one scene where Matlock goes to interview a wrestler who gives him some very funny insults and threats, and is doing the interview while he is doing arm curls.
Yeah, a great mid-'80s gym scene.
Yeah. The gym has wood paneling. It's called Al's Gym. This gym looks like shit. I loved it.
Yeah, and Andy is just baffled by any sort of exercise.
Yeah.
This, he might as well be walking onto another planet.
Yeah. He's the guy is just doing normal preacher curls, and Matlock is looking at him all right, wow. I guess it takes all sorts,
Yeah.
He's not even lifting anything particularly heavy. He's got 25-pound weights on there.
Right. And none of these men are extraordinarily in shape.
Yeah.
And he just resents any sort of non-functional physical activity.
Yeah.
Boy, but with all these curls you're doing, you could eat a lot of hot dogs. You could really just be putting hot dogs up in your face. I just hit my mic.
Marty just accidentally preacher curled his mic.
I got to keep that in the episode now. I'm going to ask a question very, very carefully so that RJ does not get in trouble with the AEW legal department.
Yeah.
You've worked with a lot of promoters. How
Yeah.
feasible is it to you, the idea that a promoter might resort to mob tactics in order to keep one of their stars
Oh
from
my god!
from jumping ship? How feasible is this situation? This is an idea to you?
Now, not very feasible. In the maybe from 1988 and earlier, I would say very feasible.
Okay. That's the answer I was looking for.
Oh my god, yes. It's a whole business based on roughing people up. Especially back then, you don't know what those contracts were like. You don't know if there was a legal department. There was a lot of, these incredible careers, and then you read these interviews and find out they were all done on a handshake deal. I always say wrestling is like the mafia run by high school kids. That's what it feels like to me. So to have...
So sick.
Like those mafia, and there's always those like, oh, Iron Sheik says Vern Gagne offered me $10,000 to break Hulk Hogan's leg. Maybe, it certainly sounds good.
I feel like Iron Sheik would do that for free. But
Probably, but yeah, it's always one of those things where you go, it sounds plausible, but also there's just a bunch of people who like lying on grand scales in this business too.
That's kind of your job.
Yeah. So you're never really sure. You would like to think back in the day that there was some sort of mafia affiliation.
Okay, so this actually seems, ridiculous costumes aside, this actually seems like a plausible thing that could happen, like something you might have to consider in this case.
Yeah, back then, if it was like really scummy and whatever, like sure.
I mean, is this what level is this wrestling association on? I was kind of having trouble picking that. Like, is this an indie circuit? Is this AEW level? Like,
well,
where are we?
That's the confusing thing. They're on TV, right? And that arena is huge,
right?
So if they sold it out like that would be a major company, I would assume.
So like a W. Is there a WCW WWF fight at this point? There's just a WCW at this point.
Yes, well, WCW is not essentially formed, so WCW is like a branch of the NWA at the time. So this is before WCW comes into its own, but the NWA and WWF are competing. They're not competing head-to-head on live TV every week because that model doesn't really exist. But there's a lot of, buildings where, hey, if we do a show in your building, you can't let them run a show in your building. Or pay-per-view companies, there was a whole thing of like, if you run this pay-per-view, you can't run a competitor's pay-per-view 30 days before or 30 days after. So there is a lot of that. I wouldn't necessarily call those mafia tactics, They don't involve that many sweaty Italian men. But yeah, there is a lot of that in 1987, especially when the business is really, really hot. At this point, they're making more money than they ever have. So, of course, that's like a big deal. And there was a lot of people jumping from companies, too. A lot of guys showing up. Piper had a pretty full career before this. And Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan. Like, those guys came from the AWA. When WWF, the first WrestleMania and all that stuff, they signed basically the best from everywhere else to build a traveling Wilburys, if you will.
A super group.
Yeah.
And actually, it feels like that model hasn't really gone away. That's kind of the AEW model to a certain extent. Going to New Japan and grabbing those guys, grabbing classic guys from the other promotions.
and AEW also has the best of the independents of guys like Orange Cassidy, who were not in a major company before this, but also like beloved, and Danhausen, who I should not need to mention. And then newer guys like Hook, who have not wrestled anywhere but AEW, but are done in a way where he's incredibly successed.
He's very popular.
So yeah, yes, I do feel like AEW is like that best of wrestling, where you have, I mean, even tonight there's a Luchador 3-way. You have people from Japan, and then you have people from Ring of Honor, and you have people like, you'll have an 18-year-old on the show, and you have a 60-year-old on the show. You know?
So sick.
Yeah.
What who was Hook tag teaming with the other day? Was it Rob Van Dam on the show
Yes.
that I would have seen? Yeah, Hook.
Yes.
Hook with Rob Van Dam. That's exactly the example of what you were just saying the other day.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the two like big reveals in the courtroom. The two courtroom reveals here.
Mm-hmm.
There's one courtroom reveal that the eyewitness is lying.
Yeah.
And the other courtroom reveal is I'm just gonna go ahead and spoil the ending here, is that Sailor Jack was killed by his manager Connie Hammond. And both of these reveals are almost the exact same logic that Elle Woods uses in Legally Blonde to get her client acquitted, especially the final one. And I kind of noticed this, and I wonder if this is just a similar thing here. Michelle, the female attorney, she gets the first reveal. She gets to do the first reveal where she points out that the crazed teen is lying because she observes her footsteps of her heels, of her high heel shoes, clanging as she climbs up the ladder to the roof.
Yeah.
And she says, like, the woman who actually lives in that building seemed pretty pissed about your heeled shoes. And
Yes.
I bet if we called her to the stand, she'd say that she heard that noise at a totally different time than what you said, and prove that you could not have possibly been there to witness the murder.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big reveal. And then the crazed fan says something like, "I had to protect Sailor. I love him." And then she's, I assume, immediately arrested for perjury. Like,
right.
she's on the stand at that
Prosecutor
point.
should be mega fired. Like, as soon as, like, you got this very clearly meant, like, she can't get through 3 sentences without crying about how much she loves Sailor Jack. Like, you didn't think to do any fucking due diligence here?
No, and I just love how she's a craze fan, and, like, Sailor Jack could not be more of, like, a scuzzy human being.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not real, no, like, Prince in shining armor vibes to Sailor Jack.
No.
He looks like he's banned from every single bar in, like, Panhandle, Florida.
I was genuinely surprised when they said that, like, he was the John Cena. Like, he was the hero. Right. I was like, that guy?
Yeah.
That guy?
You would think Dick is the guy.
I would think that Dick Butkus was the face here. Like, I was like, that guy? That guy looks like he's gonna sell me Coke in between shifts at Cracker Barrel.
I mean, to be fair, that was kind of Hulk Hogan's vibe.
Oh, not this scuzzy.
No. And
I was seeing this as, like, kind of like you were getting a low rent Hulk Hogan.
Right. And Hulk is still in, like, Hulkamania, I am a real American mode at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh shit! Yeah, okay. Never mind, Dan. You're right. Yeah, they were going for, like, Walgreens brand Hulk Hogan, right? Because they do say, like, he was America. Okay, so let's get a
we
guy.
We have Hulk Hogan at home.
I also want to point
looks
out
a little like Hulk Hogan,
and I would love to just find this of high res. There's a horrible, ugly poster of him on the wall at one point. Sailor Jack in a sailor hat, and it's just you could tell they didn't know where to shoot it because just the blue sky is behind him.
That fucking sailor hat, I swear to God. He looks like he's in, like, Little Orphan Annie, but things have gone way off the rails for her.
There is a real porno quality about him.
Actually,
really
now that I think about it, I don't know if the timing is right. RJ can correct me, but now that I think about it, that first match, you got a curly-haired, balding, blonde guy with distinct facial hair versus a big dude in a tight black bodysuit. That's Hulk versus Andre. That's WrestleMania, right?
Yeah.
That's very evocative. I don't know if the timeline works out there, but that's
85, 86, 87. When does this come out? 87?
This is 87.
So WrestleMania is 87, so it's either, and I don't know what the turnaround on these shows are. It seems like something they worked on for a very long time. But yeah, it's right around that time.
Yeah, and that's a very famous match. Like, people who didn't watch wrestling knew about that match.
Yeah,
so
for sure. And you would just know Andre the Giant anyway. You
right.
know?
I mean, it was kind of physically impossible not to. He was in your peripheral vision at all times.
The advantage
if you
of being
went
a
outside,
giant.
you could kind of see Andre the Giant.
All right, so the other big reveal. So after all of the suspects have been proven to have alibis, Andy has this whole moment. Ben Matlock has this whole moment. By the way, he also kind of disappears for a big middle chunk of the show.
Well, that's also Matlock, though.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's a supporting cast thing.
Yeah, and he saves his knockouts for the courtroom. You know?
Right. So I did wonder that. I was like, okay, the woman gets the small reveal, right? We let the lady attorney get the mid-episode reveal. And then Andy's going to come in and get the big one.
He gets the coup de grace.
He gets the coup de grace. And this is what I mean when I say it's legally blonde-ass logic. Because he's doing a Slylock Fox staring at two different photos and spot the differences between them. And these are photos of the manager coming in and out of Sailor Jack's apartment.
Yeah.
He calls the doctor, the medical examiner, to the stand, asks how the medical examiner determined time of death, and the medical examiner said, oh, it was because of the temperature of the body.
Yes.
Yeah. Matlock asks, well, what if his temperature was higher before he was killed? Like, what if he had been working out, or what if he was in a sauna, or what if he had a fever, right? And the doctor goes, I guess if he wasn't at 98.6 beforehand, my calculations could be way off, right?
Yeah.
That's our setup. So there's the setup punchline. We bring in Sailor Jack's manager, Cassie, and Matlock says, hey, in this photo of you coming in, your hair is curly. And in this photo coming out, your hair is straight. And she says, oh, that's because I was in the sauna.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever seen Legally Blonde, which of course everyone has, it's a classic. A huge part of the defense rests on one woman going and taking a shower and shampooing after a perm, which is something you're not supposed to do. This is exactly the defense that Elle Woods presents.
And even better than that, to call back this episode of this podcast we're doing, it's time for a sweaty Andy Griffith.
Oh God, that's him. That's his going Super Saiyan. Is he just gets real damp in a sauna?
He is wearing a gray wool suit in Atlanta. Like, we would all be very sweaty. But yeah, he's sweaty, and he reveals to her on the stand, "You just fucked up your own alibi." And the court just allows this. Again, I'm not docking it for this because it makes for good TV, but the judge Robert Downey Sr. doesn't even do like you better be going somewhere with this, Matlock. No, he just kind of does all right, man, what's up? So now he's proven two things. This woman has admitted that she and Sailor were in the sauna, which would have elevated his body temperature. So when she hit him, it would have looked, the timing would have been different. And also, oh, by the way, here's a white dress with wine stains on it that I just happen to have. Which, look, I don't know a lot about the American legal system, but you're required to tell the prosecution. You're required to tell people when you have new evidence.
You think so?
If Ben Matlock is like, hey man, I have a dress with the murder weapon all over it.
I stole the witness's clothes, from the dry cleaner. I did some light crime. Yeah,
it's crazy that you can just keep making it up.
I mean, it seems like even Matlock, after he accuses her, is like, I mean, you didn't really try that hard at this. It was you guys got lucky. It was kind of a shitty crime. You didn't know about the sauna thing. You just kind of hit the guy with a wine bottle and left.
And this is why I think the only reason why District Attorney Julie Marsh gives in is because she's got a crush on Matlock. Because what she should have been doing is, we're the state of Georgia. We're gonna get a conviction out of this one way or another. Everything you just did is fucking inadmissible.
Yeah.
Best of luck, asshole. Tell the jury to ignore everything that man just said.
Yeah. Yeah, not the best legal system here.
And that's it. Annihilator is, of course, acquitted. And the final scene is the whole gang, including ADA Marsh. They're on a little date. They're on a date to go see the Annihilator's last match. He's about to retire. So this is his final match. They do the bit with the ropes, and then normally quiet and reserved Ben Matlock is getting there. He's getting excited. Hey, he's fighting dirty. You killed the son of a bitch. RJ, what did you think of this scene, this last scene?
Great. And how rewarding is it to hear Andy Griffith call for the murder of someone, finally, after decades of watching him not kill or harm anyone.
He finally reached a bridge too far.
Yeah, and on a sunset flip of all moves, too. Just the lightest pin, and he's just bloodthirsty.
Seen a lot of evil in this world, but I can't imagine anything worse than that.
It is. There's an odd satisfaction in seeing him finally enjoy it.
It's nice. He's a convert now.
Yeah.
After 5 seasons of the Andy Griffith Show, of his general vibe just being like, I don't really care what anybody does about anything. Everything. Yeah. Just hearing Andy Griffith yell, "Kill the son of a bitch," feels so weird.
It is. They can't have him swear on TV, so they cut off and do the executive producer thing exactly where you think he's going to do it. It's nice.
Yeah, which is nice.
Yeah,
it does feel nice. It is satisfying. Would have been a great half-hour episode.
Yeah.
It's they could have. It's kind of rare to see a crime procedural that could be a half hour easily. Normally there's a lot more running around and hoops you got to go through, and normally they pretty easily justify an hour just because you have to talk to at least 4 suspects individually. But this is man, you could have gotten this down to 20 maybe.
Yeah.
There's
so little going on.
It's honestly the way that this show functions, this episode functions, and I'm assuming the whole show functions, is just cops seem pretty bad at their job. They just seem to arrest the first guy they see.
Yeah.
And don't really do anything after that.
I mean, that makes it one of the most accurate television shows ever, I would say, as far as and that cops essentially don't exist in this. Andy at no point in time he doesn't really go over a police statement. He doesn't interview the cops at all. So,
but just immediately knows they're wrong.
Yeah.
And dismisses them.
Yeah. That's what makes him great.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, he's a defense attorney. That's kind of his job.
Yeah.
If you're a defense attorney, your job is to assume that cops are lying at all times, forever.
Right.
That should be your default state, as it should be for many of us.
Okay, I just want to call one quick thing out that kind of drove me nuts, which is and this is just from watching way too many cop shows, is the Annihilator goes past the security guard, is seen getting in an elevator, goes up the elevator, goes into the room, sees the body, touches the body, cops are there, at that exact moment. The story of him, the apartment was wrecked from, a brutal fist fight, so he would have had to do the entire fight scene from They Live within, a 3-second period.
Right.
Which I was, waiting for them to bring up that, hey, there was not nearly enough time to kill a man.
Yeah.
In the amount of time it takes for a elevator to go down and back up, essentially, is what happens.
Yeah.
Because the security guard calls the cops immediately. We see this happen basically in real time. So about 3 minutes pass from that. Great, real quick response time on the Atlanta PD here.
Yeah. I love how messy the apartment is after that.
Yeah. So there it is. Right. That is this episode of Matlock. That's the Annihilator. I don't think we're ever going to do Matlock again. So RJ, thanks for coming on here.
You never know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to ask it up front. Have you seen a lot of Matlock?
Not a tremendous amount. Enough to get the gist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think I've seen enough to get the gist. From this.
Yeah. There's nothing. There's a lot of dragging going on, as we've seen in this episode.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like, oh, I got the premise. I can take a nap, and then I can wake up for the ending.
I can see why it's an old people show.
Yeah.
It's very.
But also the
leisure.
thing, much like, I don't know, Law and Order or something, the courtroom is the part you want to see.
Yeah. I mean, that's
his
the
weird
point.
monologues.
We're there to watch Andy very slowly give us the reveal.
Right.
Like, we're just sitting there edging. We're just edging with Andy Griffith.
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
Sometimes I say things just so that they'll be the episode title.
Oh man.
RJ, earlier this week I wrote a bunch of like wrestling sitcom hypothetical questions, but now I kind of feel like an asshole for writing them, so I'm just going to ask you one.
Go ahead.
Right. Which Golden Girl would you choose as your tag team partner and why?
I'd be Arthur. I mean Dorothy. There's no question. Even if we just go by foot size.
Oh, okay. She has reach, but wait, is it actress or is it character?
Well, both.
Both.
Yeah.
Blanche DuVois has a cruelty to her that I think I would want next to me in a fight. There is a rage within that woman.
I think it's an uncontrollable rage, as we've seen many times, and I think Dorothy has the reserve, to know when not to do something.
Right. Like Blanche is gonna overextend in like the first 5 minutes and
Exactly.
just get annihilated.
Right.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you got that steady presence with Dorothy.
Yeah.
All right. You talked me into it. I buy that.
I don't think Blanche would tag you in either, right? Like,
right.
She's not going to tag out. So,
Mm-hmm.
Once she's in the ring, it's not ending till the 3 count. So you're going to spend a lot of time hanging out in the turnbuckle. All right. So RJ City, thank you so much for being on this show with us.
This is great. I hope this is what people wanted.
It's at least what our listeners want.
Yeah.
I don't think,
which still baffles us a little bit.
In 150 episodes, I don't know that we've ever delivered what people want from this show. So why would we start now?
Yeah, no. Enjoy another obscure offering from Breaking Mayberry.
RJ, would you like to just promote AEW or promote anything that you're doing right now?
No, at this juncture, absolutely not.
I
think it's best that...
it's what you're literally paid to do, and we're not paying you, so I'm going to ask you to work in your off time.
Yes, if you want to see me make the same obscure references to wrestlers' faces, AEW is every Sunday morning at the crack of dawn, youtube.com/AW. Otherwise, there's so much AEW going on. There's so much of my stuff going on. Just Google it and figure it out for yourselves. I trust you.
The number of our fans that don't know your whole deal is like a guy. So you got one.
Right.
Yeah.
Works for me.
If you like our show, how about you hit us with them ratings and reviews? And tell a friend, because honestly, we're not doing any of the promotion stuff anymore. If you want extended episodes, you want more time of this discussion with RJ and extended episodes of all of our things, plus bonus episodes and content, hit us up at patreon.com/Breaking Mayberry. And we're enjoying this. We love you all. Thank you very much for being here. RJ, I fucked that whole ending up. That's right.
Well, we're going to stick with it now, and you can't edit it out.
Yeah, no, it's been referenced now. Telling our fans that you love them.
I said I love you all to the fans, and I meant to say that, but then I said thank you for being here, so it's kind of me saying I love you to RJ, which is a very weird thing to do.
Yeah,
RJ
has not gotten any better.
It's not getting better.
Now it's
not
preserved.
getting better.
We're
It's
just
not
sitting in it
getting
now.
better. I need to bail out of this so hard. We'll see you all
This is
down.
everything I needed from this episode.
We'll see you all down at the fishing hole.
Goodbye.
Ba-da-ba-dum, ba-da-dum, 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 ba-da-dum.